All right, this is notes 4.3. We're going to walk through, I'm just going to walk you guys through the answer key, and you're going to fill this out. So you should use your packet that you got to, it should say notes 4.3 at the top, cellular respiration. Just go ahead and pull that out of your packet. You can organize your papers inside of your packet in your binder if you'd like. I put them all in order. So if you're in the dorm, you received a packet. If you are not watching this from the dorm, but you're a home student who is quarantining, you will need to go onto Google Classroom and print off notes 4.3, which I have posted there, and fill that out on your own using this video here to help you fill that out, okay? If you are at the dorm and you received a quarantine packet and you're taking papers out of that, keep in mind that quiz 4.3 is in there, but it is folded up. So please just keep that paper folded up and don't look at it yet. And we will be taking that later this week. And that will be over these notes, and you will be doing the homework to help you with these notes, okay? So Sally, at any time, you can pause this video to write down what you're seeing here. These are our last notes, so there's no 4.4. This is the last notes of the semester. So yeah, that's great. Notes 4.3 is cellular respiration, okay? When I say respiration, you should think of breathing. Okay, spire means breathe, kind of like spirit or inspiration. Cellular just means it's happening in every single one of your cells. So this is related to the process of breathing. It's why you breathe in oxygen and why you breathe out CO2. And it happens in every one of your cells. Okay? The purpose of this process is to unpack energy by breaking down sugar. You have sugar that you've eaten or consumed, and that contains energy. We want to unpack that by doing some metabolism, which means we're going to break it down. So here's that process of how we actually break that down. It's kind of the opposite of photosynthesis. Now here's the thing, every organism does this. So remember from our notes 4.1, whether you're an autotroph or a heterotroph, you're a plant, a fungus, an animal, no matter what, you are going to be doing cellular respiration to break down sugar because you want to get that energy from the sugar. Okay. So here's a question that we want to ask. Why do you breathe out more carbon dioxide than you breathe in? And you can write that down. Why do you breathe out more carbon dioxide than you breathe in? When I'm breathing right now, there's like 4% carbon dioxide that's coming out of my breath. When I breathe in, there's only like 0.4% or 0.04% carbon dioxide that's coming in. So I actually have less carbon dioxide that I breathe in, and I'm breathing out carbon dioxide. So I'm breathing out a lot of carbon dioxide. Well, where is that carbon dioxide coming from? Most people know that I'm breathing out carbon dioxide. And when I showed you notes 4.1 and I had my CO2 measurer, okay, and I was using that to measure CO2, I was holding that up to my mouth and I breathed on it. And do you remember the graph went up where it was like CO2 is increasing when I took it out of the bottle? Why is that happening? Well, it's because your cells are breaking down sugar. It's breaking down your food and it's releasing the carbons and oxygens from the sugar as CO2. Releasing the carbons and the oxygens from that sugar and combining them into CO2 and releasing it. So I'm literally breathing out my food. Okay? Most of your food is not gotten rid of by going down the toilet. Most of your food that you eat, a lot of that biomass is being released as air that you breathe out. Okay, you are breathing it out. Now here's the equation for cellular respiration here. C6H12O6, which is a sugar molecule. We're going to get that from our food. If you're a plant, then you're just going to get it from in storage somewhere inside of your plant, whether that's in the root or in the fruit or in the shoot or in a leaf or something like that, okay? So remember, plants make their own food. So here's a glucose molecule right here. And I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen. You probably can't, okay? But we see right here is the sugar molecule that I've got, and I have to breathe in oxygen. Okay, plants also take in oxygen. You have to breathe in oxygen. Animals have to breathe in oxygen. And the reason is because you need that oxygen from the air. So anything red here you can write, right? From the air is being brought in, and that's going to help this sugar break apart so that it can rearrange some of those atoms, okay, and build carbon dioxide molecules, which we're going to breathe back into the air. And then it's also going to create some water in the process too. And that water could go several places. We could breathe it out. You could go to the cell or to other places in the environment. So water is being created in this process of breaking down the sugar as well. Okay. So this is a mathematically balanced equation up here, which is why I've got a 6O2, a 6CO2, and a 6H2O. So this is just kind of a net balance that I've got. Keep in mind, I've got like hundreds of different molecules all doing this process. And they're all kind of jumbled up in there and rearranging themselves. So you can highlight the oxygen molecules here, one color. And what that oxygen is going to do eventually is it's going to create some water. Okay. And the C6H12O6, this oxygen here, is going to eventually be breathed out as carbon dioxide back into the air, right? So that's where these oxygens are coming from, okay? All right, notice this is the exact opposite of photosynthesis. If I wanted to see the process of photosynthesis, okay, I could just turn this diagram upside down. If I turn this diagram upside down, or just turned it around, I'd get water plus CO2, which is what plants need, would create sugar and oxygen. And that oxygen gas is released and it's creating that sugar, okay? That's what photosynthesis is. Cellular respiration just does the opposite in order to get that energy back out of the sugar. So one process puts energy into the sugar and plants do it. The other process takes it out of the sugar, and both plants and animals do that. Okay. Now this is very similar to a fire, which is why at the top I have a little candle right here. Okay. I love candles. I've got a candle right here, and it is burning right now. And especially during Christmas season, candles are the best, all right? What kind of gas does this fire need? Okay, it needs oxygen gas. Fires need oxygen to burn. Okay, it's kind of, I just blew it out, all right? I deprived it of oxygen in a sense, all right? So it needs oxygen in order to burn, and it's going to give off heat as well. All right, where's my lighter? All right, when I light a candle, let me see if I can get this back. All right, when I light a candle, it's producing a lot of heat in this process where the oxygen's coming in. That heat is very similar to your body heat. Okay, you are burning calories. Okay, remember sugar has calories. Sugar has 4 calories per gram, kilocalories, okay? So just like I'm burning calories, so this fire is also burning calories. Remember, calories is just a measurement of heat, okay? So the reason I'm breathing in oxygen is so that I can burn calories. Oxygen is needed to fuel the fire inside of me in a sense, okay? It's not like I literally have actual flames engulfing my intestines or something, okay? But I do have a metabolism going on in all of my cells, okay? And that metabolism is taking in oxygen that I breathed. It's breaking up sugar. It's giving off heat. And you know what else fires produce? Produce carbon dioxide. If I were to hold that carbon dioxide measurement over the flame, it would spike in CO2. CO2 will, okay? There's a lot of CO2 coming out of this fire. When I burn things, carbon dioxide is created. Okay, just like me, I'm creating carbon dioxide when I breathe out. Okay, and that carbon dioxide is coming from my food. I also am breathing out water, and so is this fire. Okay, did you know fire produces water? Maybe you didn't know that. If you were to hold a spoon, which I do not have here, over a candle flame, you would see water droplets starting to form. So what you're seeing here, the actual flame, is all these particles, including water particles that are super energized. So you're seeing a lot of light. Okay. So this flame is taking in oxygen. This candle wax is made up of carbons and hydrogens. Okay. Kind of like sugar is. So it's burning hydrocarbons, kind of like we burn sugar. Okay. It's giving off heat. It's giving off CO2. It's giving off water, just the same as I do. Okay. You are kind of a fire. That's what your cells are doing. They're burning sugar. They're burning calories. That's going to give you energy. And most importantly, it's going to charge up your ATP batteries. What is the organelle that all this happens in? Okay, this is the mitochondria, so you should already know this. This is the mighty sugar breaker. And this is present in both animal and plant cells. So here I've got a rabbit and a clover, and we're going to zoom into those cells, and we can zoom into this nice mitochondria that I've got here. Now, this mitochondria is made up of phospholipids on the outside. Remember, any type of membrane in a cell is made up of phospholipids that are arranged kind of in a bilayer. So just like a cell membrane, okay, it's not a cell, it's an organelle, but it has phospholipids, okay? And it has two membranes. It has an inner membrane, which is this orange one, so you can label that the inner membrane. And it has this outer membrane, which we would call the red membrane is the outer membrane, okay? So there's two membranes. And it's folded this way so that you can get lots of surface area crammed into a small little organelle, all right? So this is what a mitochondria looks like, or mitochondrion is technically a singular word, but I usually call it mitochondria, okay? So that's what the mitochondria looks like. So what is the process of cellular respiration, and how does that actually break down the sugar? So let's look at that. This is an example from a animal, okay, it could be for you, okay, with lungs and blood vessels and stuff. So this could happen in plants, but we're just going to look at it from an animal's perspective here. Okay, this is a little bit backwards. I start with stage 1 on my right, and I go to the left to look at go to stage 3. Okay, so I've arranged this kind of in a strange way. Wow, this looks complicated. It's kind of similar to photosynthesis, though. It's kind of just the opposite, right? I've just made blanks for the names of these stages, and I'm just going to describe what happens in each stage. Okay, glycolysis is stage 1. So you can fill out this green part right here. Stage 1 is glycolysis. Glyco means sugar. Lysis means like it's falling apart or it's breaking, okay? So I'm just breaking apart sugar, glycolysis, sugar breaking apart, okay? So let's say that I've eaten glucose. My intestines take some sort of starch or something and break it down into glucose, send it to my cells in my body through my bloodstream, okay? So actually glucose could be entering in from the blood. Remember, the protein insulin is going to tell my cells to let them enter. And then it's going to go to the mitochondria, okay? Now, it is full of these atoms, and these atoms all just, their bonds get broken, and I form these energetic molecules, okay? They're called pyruvate molecules is technically what they're called. You don't have to know that. But here you can see that I've kind of snapped in half this little hexagon structure of glucose. And I've got these two molecules that have just formed from glucose, right? So I've first step of cellular respiration is glycolysis. This actually happens outside of the mitochondria, so we're not in the mitochondria yet. So the sugar is being broken down in cellular respiration, but it does have to shatter a little bit before it enters into the mitochondria, okay? But it gets broken down even further by the mitochondria, which is why we can still call the mitochondria the sugar breakers, okay? So here these molecules enter in, right? And we see there they are for step 2, okay? Well, what's going to happen for step 2, okay? Step 2 is called the Krebs cycle. And let's name that because a guy named Krebs discovered it, okay? So there's some carbon and oxygen atoms from these energetic pyruvate molecules, okay? And they are released as CO2, okay? So this used to be my sugar. I've created these, I've broken it down, okay? And I'm breaking it down even further. And the mitochondria is just crushing those molecules and ripping out those carbons and those oxygens. Now, those carbons and those oxygens are going to bond together to create carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is going to leave the mitochondria and then enter the bloodstream and go back to the lungs. And that's why my lungs are breathing out carbon dioxide. Breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide, breathing out carbon dioxide. Because my body is constantly breaking down this food, okay? I just ate dinner and my body is breaking that down. I'm breathing out the food that I've eaten with every breath, all right? So that carbon dioxide is going to leave my mitochondria and go into the bloodstream. It's kind of weird. Carbon dioxide is waste. Okay, there's 2 reasons why you need to eat food. Number 1, you need the molecules to build your own molecules. You need your own monomers to build polymers for yourself. So sometimes the food that I'm eating is going to go to certain places in my body and I'm going to assimilate it, okay? Or I'm going to maybe convert it into a different kind of molecule and I'm going to start building my own molecules, okay? So sometimes I need to build them up. That's what I'm made of. You are what you eat. Like my body is made up of the materials that I've taken in through eating and I've kind of assimilated it, all right? But sometimes you also need to burn your food. So you need to build it up sometimes, other times you need to break it down. So this is what's happening to the sugar that's being broken down. Now carbons and oxygens, those are really heavy atoms. Hydrogens, they're super light. So most of the mass of my food, I'm actually breathing out. And it's a waste product. So when it comes to sugar being used for energy and carbs being used for energy, a lot of those carbons and oxygens, I'm just going to rip out and breathe out. Don't even need to use them. What I want, especially want, is the hydrogens. The hydrogens are going to be so important for helping charge my batteries. Remember, my ADP batteries are spent. They're yellow. They need to be charged up to green. They need to get ATP, okay? So these little hydrogens are going to help me because the hydrogens are going to be flying off of these broken sugars and these broken molecules that are coming from my sugars. Electrons are also going to be flying off, okay? So let's see what this hydrogen does. Notice I have this little hydrogen atom. He's flying off of these broken down molecules. All right, and he's going to be flying across the mitochondria. He's going across membranes and all sorts of stuff, okay? So that leads us to stage 3, which has some subparts in it that I've divided up, okay? So first we had glycolysis, breaking down the sugar. Then we had the Krebs cycle, okay? In the Krebs cycle, it is a cycle. It keeps happening over and over and over again, okay? I'm breathing out my carbon dioxide, getting rid of that, okay? Because I just want the hydrogens as one of the main things, okay? Okay, stage 3 is called the electron transport. It's when the electrons are being transported and the hydrogens are being transported. So you notice this little electron here, these electrons are bouncing off and they're dancing again. My electrons are dancing across the membranes and they're interacting with different molecules. They're doing important things, okay? Those electrons are being transported down and my hydrogens are being transported across as well, okay? So stage 3A is when those, some other energetic molecules, they're going to be releasing electrons and hydrogen ions. Okay, so you've got these coming off of those energetic molecules that came from the sugar. The electrons and the hydrogens are going to help this enzyme called ATP synthase to make 34 ATP molecules. Remember, I want to charge ATP. I've got all these batteries that my cells are using, okay? If I want to, if my cells want to eat things, if my cells want to protect themselves, if they want to read DNA, if my cells want to do anything, they have to use ATP as batteries. Those batteries are being spent, so I need to recharge them. Well, what kind of machine would recharge my ADP batteries? Well, this thing called ATP synthase, and this is what it looks like, okay? These are little revolving doors. The blue part is a little revolving door that you see. And basically the hydrogens are going to be driving this protein, okay? It's an enzyme. It ends in ACE. It's a protein. That means it's a super complex macromolecule that is made of amino acids, okay? It is embedded inside of my mitochondria. So my mitochondria have a lot of ATP synthases, and the hydrogens are there to drive it. Okay, those hydrogens are going to just spill through that little protein, and it's going to turn that little protein kind of like a water mill. If you've ever seen water flowing over a mill and it's producing energy, same thing is happening here with ATP synthase. Those hydrogens are going to come through and drive that little machine. Those machines are going to take in all these spent batteries, okay? For every glucose molecule that I've had, all right? I'm going to get these about 34 ADP batteries that are going to come in to my ATP synthase. And the ATP synthase protein is going to take phosphates that are just floating around. It's going to take those and attach it to the ADPs to make them ATPs, okay? It can only do that if hydrogens are flowing through it, okay? So then it's going to take the ADPs and turn them into ATPs, and I'm charging my batteries. So here's why sugar gives you energy. Because when you eat sugar, sugar has hydrogens. When you break down the sugar, those hydrogens go flying off of the sugar and drive ATP synthase, which is going to recharge all your batteries. Okay? So you recharge your batteries. That was step 3B, okay? Now, all those ATP batteries are recharged. Okay, here I've got, there's some batteries got here. All right, got my batteries. They're recharged. They've been charged by those flying hydrogens. They're going to go off into the cell. They're going to go somewhere else, and they're going to go help it, read DNA, or they're going to go help it build proteins, or they're going to go help it do other things that take energy. Okay, what's going to happen to my hydrogens? I've got all these hydrogens that went through, they did their job, they helped charge ATP. Well, there's a reason why I need to breathe in oxygen. I'm breathing in oxygen because that oxygen is going to be there at the end of the whole process to catch the hydrogens. Okay? And when it catches those hydrogens, it makes H2O. Okay, it takes, for every one oxygen atom that I have, there's going to be 2 of those hydrogens that combine. You can kind of imagine it like a football player is throwing a hydrogen football across. He's not going to throw it unless somebody's there to catch it. The person there to catch that is the oxygen. Okay? So I'm breathing in oxygen from my lungs. It's going to come in. It's going to catch that hydrogen. And the thing that's going to glue them together are these electrons that also came from the sugar. So the electrons are going to come back, and they're going to fuse those hydrogen atoms to the oxygen, and I'm going to create water. So it created water out of the process. So the reason you need to breathe in oxygen is because you need something to catch all the hydrogens that are flying through your ATP synthase proteins, which are charging up your batteries. The reason you need to eat food is because, one of the reasons is because you need to get hydrogens from that food, because those hydrogens are going to operate your charger for your batteries, okay? Your little ATP synthase, okay? So that is the process of cellular respiration. Again, remember, cellular respiration, respiring is like breathing. I'm taking in oxygen and I'm releasing CO2, and that's how I break down sugar. And the main organelle that's doing that process is the mitochondria, using ATP synthase, which is a protein. If you need to pause and go back and rewind, feel free to do that. Again, anytime that I'm talking, just pause if you need more room to think about stuff. Right. We're going to move on to the next page here. So that is how cellular respiration occurs. Now, cellular respiration needs oxygen. Needs it at the end to catch those hydrogens. But if you don't have enough oxygen available, or even if there's not enough oxygen, what's going to happen? Cells are actually going to do a process called fermentation instead of cellular respiration. Okay? And your cells can do this, but most importantly, other cells can do this, like yeast cells and bacteria. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Okay, we're going to compare cellular respiration and fermentation, which are both ways of breaking down sugar. Okay, in cellular respiration, oxygen is available to use. In fermentation, oxygen is not available to use. You can write this down. So in cellular respiration, oxygen is available for you to use. You're breathing it in, it's fine. Fermentation happens when there's no oxygen available or not enough. Okay. Now, remember I said for every glucose molecule, you get to charge up 34 ATP batteries. Okay. Sometimes even more. So cellular respiration makes over 34 ATP molecules. Fermentation only makes 2 ATP. It's a really slow process. If you don't have oxygen, you have to actually change the process a little bit, so you don't make very many ATPs because it has to go through a different chemical pathway. Okay, so fermentation is more like a survival thing. Like if you have to, then do it and get by with it. But cellular respiration is going to be more ideal, especially for us larger multicellular organisms. Let's look at some examples. Okay, example of cellular respiration. Okay, it's usually happening. So if you're breathing at a normal rate, you're getting enough oxygen for normal activities. So right now, I'm sitting down, I'm talking with you. That's all that I'm doing. I'm not really doing that much. Okay, while I'm talking, I'm breathing constantly. All right, that breathing is totally enough for me to do what I'm doing right now. Okay, I don't need that much energy to talk to you right now. I'm not running a marathon. I don't need that much energy. I don't need to be charging my ATP batteries super crazy, so I don't need to take in that much oxygen. Breathing just like normal is going to be totally fine with me. Okay? In that case, most of my cells are just all doing cellular respiration. Now, when you run for a long time, let's think about fermentation here, okay? You cannot breathe in enough oxygen to fuel your cellular respiration. Okay, let's say you're running a marathon, and you're just running and running and running and running. Okay, you're not going to be able to take in enough energy. Your body needs a lot of energy because in order for you to move your muscles, you need ATP, which means you need to charge them, which means you need to use ATP synthase, which means your mitochondria need hydrogens from your food, which means you need oxygen in order to catch those hydrogens. Okay, so if you're not breathing in enough oxygen, okay, your body's just going to make a little bit of ATP to get you by. and then you have to start to slow down. So you can't go on forever. Okay, and even when you do finish, you're going to be like, okay, you're going to be breathing heavily. You want to get in as much oxygen as you can so you can get right back to doing cellular respiration. Okay, now fermentation is going to produce an acid, and that's going to make your muscles feel like they're burning. Okay, so fermentation will produce some carbon dioxide. It'll be producing some acid, okay, lactic acid. Could actually make your muscles sore. So that's part of why your muscles will feel sore after, maybe you're running cross country or doing something really energetic, okay? Where you were probably doing fermentation because you didn't have enough oxygen, so you were just getting by with a little amount of ATP per the amount of glucose molecules that you ate, okay? Now, that's for multicellular organisms. That's an example of fermentation, okay? Let's look at yeast. Yeast is a type of fungus, okay? You probably know it when we talk about bread, okay? Maybe you've seen somebody making bread and they use yeast in it, all right? Well, when that yeast is inside of the dough, there's not really a lot of oxygen inside of that dough, okay? That flour that you mixed in the dough and the yeast that you put in that, thing that you're making bread out of, there's not much oxygen in there. So it's actually going to undergo fermentation. Now, fermentation and cellular respiration, they're both ways of breaking down sugar, and they both release carbon dioxide. So yeast are going to produce carbon dioxide, and that's actually what makes bread rise. So if you open up a piece of bread, you got all these air bubbles inside of that bread. That's because those air bubbles were CO2. You had CO2 in the flour, in the dough, and it was rising, okay? Especially if you put it in warm temperatures, right? Because warm temperatures are going to help it, help the metabolism go more quickly. So if you put bread in the oven, what you're actually doing is you're causing yeast to ferment more. The reason you put yeast inside of the bread is that it's going to produce CO2, so that'll make your bread rise and it makes your bread fluffy. So without fermentation, we wouldn't even have bread. That's how that whole process works. Now, fermentation produces CO2. It also produces alcohol. Okay, so bread is actually alcoholic. But when you put it in the oven, that alcohol will burn away. So by the time you take bread out of the oven, the bread's not alcoholic. So you're not going to get drunk from eating bread. Don't worry. But we do use yeast and some bacteria and some other organisms to do fermentation to create alcoholic beverages such as wine, okay? So there's yeast on grapes. If you've ever taken a grape, maybe you see a white powdery stuff on it and you can kind of scrape that white powdery stuff off of the grape, okay? That is yeast and bacteria and all sorts of microbes, okay? Those are going to do a process called fermentation. When you put them in a wine barrel, guess what? They don't have very much oxygen. So you put all this grape material and grape juice inside of the barrel. You don't have any oxygen. So all those microbes, all that yeast is going to be fermenting. They break down the sugar. Okay? They release CO2, which is why you're going to have a bubbly aspect to different alcoholic beverages. Okay? And alcohol. So that's what makes wine alcoholic. Alcohol is being produced by yeast. All right. There's another way that also we can create other kinds of food using fermentation. When you have bacteria and mold, when they do fermentation, so they don't have oxygen available, they're breaking down their own food. They're going to be producing certain chemicals that will change milk into cheese. So this is how we make cheese. This is how we make wine. This is how we make bread, is we're taking little organisms, we're not giving them oxygen and forcing them to break down sugar through fermentation instead of through the default cellular respiration, okay? So different molds, different bacteria produce different flavors, different types of cheese. So blue cheese is going to have that mold still in it, all right? You're going to have different kinds of cheese that are going to have different kinds of mold, different kind of bacteria. And what they've done is they've changed the chemical structure of the milk. They've broken down some of those sugars. Okay? They've done those different processes. So fermentation, again, just to review, is one way that cells can break down sugar if they don't have enough oxygen. If enough oxygen is available to use, cellular respiration is going to be the default normal way to break it down. And that's what you're probably doing right now as you're just sitting here watching. As a review, remember, the reason you eat food is to get the hydrogens from your food so that it can drive proteins like ATP synthase to charge your batteries. The reason you breathe in oxygen is because you want oxygens there to catch those flying hydrogens that are coming from your burning sugar, okay? But remember, when I'm talking about burning calories, that's like this process right here, okay? I'm breaking down my sugar, I'm burning it, and I'm getting those hydrogens from it. And the reason why, if we go back to our original question, why do you breathe out more carbon dioxide than you breathe in? It's because you're breathing out carbon dioxide that's coming from your sugars and from your sugar molecules. It's taking all those carbons and oxygens and it's combining them and it's getting rid of them. Because your body doesn't want the carbons and the oxygens for energy as much as it wants the hydrogens. Now, of course, remember, you could eat food to take in carbons and oxygens to build other molecules. So there's multiple reasons for you to eat food, but this is energetically speaking the reason why. Okay. So there's your notes on cellular respiration. You can go back and pause anytime that you need to. If you have questions, please comment below or email me or let me know in the next video call. What you can do is pull out your homework 4.1, and you can do that on probably will be your own time, okay? You can also work on that tomorrow, and the answer key will be uploaded later for you to check that, okay? So today and tomorrow or whatever, just work on the homework, and that'll be the main thing that we're doing. Okay? If you have any questions, just let me know. Hang in there, keep persevering. We've got like 6 days left of remote learning before Christmas break. You can do it. Yeah. All right. Have a good day.